Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes fact-checking the third Republican primary debate. Russian missile strike turned Ukrainian medal ceremony into a bloodbath. Russia's war economy leaves businesses starved of labor. Indonesia president will convey to Biden that Hamas-Israel war should be stopped. Ukraine, Israel. Can America support two wars and still handle China? Fact-checking the third Republican primary debate. Washington Post. During the third GOP debate of the 2024 election cycle, several claims were made that caught the attention of fact-checkers. Nikki Haley accurately cited statistics on the national debt, people living paycheck to paycheck, and families struggling to afford diapers and utility bills. She also accurately blamed former President Donald Trump for contributing to the national debt. Entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy made a baseless claim that Hunter Biden received a $5 million bribe from Ukraine, and there is no evidence to support this allegation. Senator Tim Scott misleadingly claimed that former President Barack Obama and President Joe Biden sent money to Iran, when in reality, the money was returned to facilitate the release of American detainees. Other claims made during the debate included Nikki Haley's assertion that China has a larger naval fleet than the United States. While China may have more ships overall, the United States has more aircraft carriers and destroyers. Ramaswamy made several claims about Ukraine, including that the country has banned 11 opposition parties and consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. While there have been actions taken against certain organizations and media outlets, Ramaswamy's characterization is exaggerated. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis echoed an attack ad claiming that Nikki Haley welcomed Chinese companies to South Carolina, but the ad was found to be misleading. Overall, fact-checkers found that several claims made during the debate were either accurate, misleading, or baseless. It is important to fact-check the claims made by politicians to ensure that accurate information is being presented to the public. Russian missile strike turned Ukrainian medal ceremony into a bloodbath. Washington Post. At least 19 Ukrainian soldiers were killed and dozens more injured in a missile strike during a medal ceremony near the front line in southeastern Zaporizhia. The attack on the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade has raised questions about why such a large public event was held in a location that could easily be seen by Russian drones and was well within range of Russian missiles. The incident also raises questions about how the Russians knew to target the ceremony. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has suspended the brigade commander while an investigation is carried out. The incident has unleashed a wave of public criticism on social media, which is unusual for Ukraine. Russia's war economy leaves businesses starved of labor. Financial Times. Russia's labor market is experiencing severe shortages as the country mobilizes its military and increases defense production in preparation for a long war in Ukraine. The labor shortages are exacerbating existing weaknesses in the Russian economy, which has been propped up by rising defense spending. The war has led to the mobilization of hundreds of thousands of men, causing an exodus of educated young men fleeing abroad to avoid conscription. This has particularly affected sectors reliant on highly skilled labor, such as IT. The Russian government's decision to prioritize defense production has further aggravated the labor shortages, with civilian industries struggling to find workers. Unemployment in Russia has fallen to its lowest level in 30 years, leaving businesses struggling to find workers for labor-intensive industries. The war-related increases in defense production have led to a surge in the Purchasing Managers' Index for military-related industries. The shortage of workers has also led to an increase in the length of the working week in Russia, with many factories operating in 3 shifts. Indonesia president will convey to Biden that Hamas-Israel war should be stopped. Reuters. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo, also known as Jokowi, plans to relay a message to U.S. President Joe Biden urging an immediate end to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Jokowi will attend an international summit in Riyadh to discuss the war before meeting with Biden. Indonesia has joined other countries in calling for a ceasefire and has provided humanitarian aid to Gaza. The meeting between Jokowi and Biden is also expected to cover discussions on upholding international law and maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Ukraine, Israel. Can America support two wars and still handle China? New York Times. As we highlighted yesterday, the recent conflict in Gaza risks delaying progress on some of the U.S.'s most critical challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, including the need to counter China, which many nations in the region fear the U.S. is not moving fast enough to tackle. This article in the New York Times highlights how, for many of America's partners in the Indo-Pacific, the sudden U.S. focus on the Middle East feels like a loss, delaying progress on some of their most critical challenges. The U.S. has, however, said that no equipment has left the Indo-Pacific, and two top cabinet officials, Defense Secretary Lloyd J. Austin III and Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken, will be crisscrossing Asia this week with messages of reassurance. These visits are likely to hear a mix of views on Gaza, with India more supportive of Israel, Japan seeking a more balanced approach, and Indonesia increasingly outraged by the thousands of civilians killed in the Israeli invasion that has followed Hamas' assault on Israel. World's two biggest emitters hold key to success at COP28 summit. Bloomberg. The US and China have begun talks ahead of the COP28 summit in Dubai later this month, but the bilateral relationship between the two nations is making negotiations difficult. The U.S. presidential campaign has seen anti-China rhetoric, and President Joe Biden will face scrutiny if he is seen as being soft on China. China's economy is also struggling, and there is concern over energy security. The upcoming presidential poll in Taiwan adds another element of uncertainty to the relationship. Historically, climate change is the one area where the two nations have been able to find common ground, but recently tensions have made substantive engagement on the issue difficult. We showed them, Azerbaijan parades army in Nagorno-Karabakh. BBC. Azerbaijan has held a military parade in the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, weeks after recapturing the region in a rapid offensive. The parade took place in the regional capital, Kankendi, which was left deserted after the conflict. Azerbaijan's president warned Armenia against revanchist sentiments at the parade. The conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh has been ongoing for decades between Azerbaijan and Armenia. How the world lost faith in the UN. Foreign Affairs. The United Nations, UN, is facing a crisis of confidence amidst the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, according to diplomats and UN officials. The organization has struggled to respond effectively to these crises, and tensions between Russia and the West have undermined discussions on unrelated issues in Africa and the Middle East. The war between Israel and Hamas threatens to further damage the UN's credibility, with the United States' unconditional support for Israel causing diplomatic damage. The divide among member states over the Israel-Palestine conflict has also raised doubts about the United States' recent push to improve its relations with the Global South at the UN, as some countries may reject future resolutions in support of Ukraine in response to the lack of Western solidarity with the Palestinians. The wars in the Middle East and Ukraine have put enormous pressure on UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and the UN's conflict management system, as unified support from the Security Council has been lacking and governments and warring parties have refused to work with UN mediators or demanded the withdrawal of UN peacekeepers. However, the UN can still find its footing by adapting its diplomatic and security roles to new global realities. It can focus on a limited number of priorities and hand off crisis management to others when possible. Furthermore, the UN can support other crisis managers, such as regional organizations and individual countries, and continue to play a substantial role in international conflict management through its relief agencies and efforts in conflict prevention. Despite the challenges it faces, the UN remains a crucial platform for cooperation and dialogue among member states. First woman to head Georgia's central bank looks to end IMF rift. Bloomberg. Georgia's acting central bank governor, Naisha Turneva, has said that the country is looking to revive a $289 million program with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The program was halted earlier this year due to questions over the regulator's independence and the enforcement of sanctions. Turneva hopes that the program can be put back on track in the nearest months. Restoring the deal would reassure investors as the country recovers from the regional effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Nearly half of Democrats disapprove of Biden's response to the Israel-Hamas war, APNORC poll shows. Associated Press. Nearly half of Democrats disapprove of how President Joe Biden is handling the Israel-Hamas conflict, according to a new poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research, showing a deep divide within his party over the war. The poll found 50% of Democrats approve of how Biden has navigated the conflict while 46% disapprove, and the two groups diverge substantially in their views of U.S. support for Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusty observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news and provide some witty analysis. Let's dive right in. In the recent GOP debate, fact-checkers were kept busy. Nikki Haley made accurate claims about the national debt and financial struggles faced by many Americans. However, Vivek Ramaswamy's baseless accusation against Hunter Biden and Tim Scott's misleading statement about money sent to Iran were called out. It's important for politicians to be fact-checked to ensure accurate information is being presented to the public. Moving on to international news, a tragic incident occurred in Ukraine, where a missile strike during a medal ceremony led to the deaths of 19 soldiers. Questions are being raised about the location choice and how the Russians knew to target the ceremony. Meanwhile, labor shortages in Russia due to the war effort in Ukraine have led to a struggling economy, with businesses unable to find sufficient workers. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo plans to convey to President Biden the need for an immediate end to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Indonesia has joined other countries in calling for a ceasefire and providing humanitarian aid to Gaza. However, this conflict risks delaying progress on critical challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, including countering China. Speaking of China, the US and China have begun talks ahead of the COP28 summit, but their strained relationship is making negotiations difficult. President Biden faces scrutiny for being seen as soft on China, and there are concerns about energy security and the upcoming presidential poll in Taiwan. Azerbaijan held a military parade in the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, weeks after recapturing the region. This ongoing conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia has been a source of tension for decades. The United Nations is facing a crisis of confidence due to its struggles in responding effectively to conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. The war between Israel and Hamas threatens to further damage the UN's credibility, and tensions between Russia and the West have hindered discussions on other issues. However, the UN can still find its footing by adapting to new global realities and focusing on a limited number of priorities. Georgia's central bank is looking to revive a program with the IMF to reassure investors as the country recovers from the regional effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Lastly, a poll shows that nearly half of Democrats disapprove of President Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas conflict, highlighting a deep divide within the party. And there you have it, folks. The latest news from around the world. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you make of these developments? Do you have any burning questions? Let's get the discussion going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.